So Lord means like king. In the feudal days, we had lords and vassals. So I wondered, should he be in charge of my life? Should I really be committed to his teachings, or should I not? Would my values be his values, and would my direction be aligned with his desires and commands? I was tired of floundering through life without feeling any real direction. But here, there was a purpose that appeared to be good. I felt that a decision about this was overdue. So with the sensitivity and the energy and the boldness or courage of youth, I was willing to jump in. I made the positive decision in my heart. That was one reaction. But the reaction was one of tremendous wholeness and a feeling of joy, like I was talking before. But there was another reaction. Within a few seconds, I also felt a heavy burden, a sense of responsibility. What about all those in the world who had not made such a decision? What about my own family and friends? Unfortunately, I was too shy and afraid to speak to them about this. Was the importance of this decision worth the responsibility? I felt that it was. When I went off to Wesleyan University in 1952, I had no idea what major to take. Should I head into science or into medicine? When I was a Boy Scout, our family physician in Bryn Mawr put the idea of medicine into my head. Now that I was interested in doing something that helps people in need, I did make medicine the choice. Incidentally, the decision would have been a lot easier if I had sought out career guidance and had some experience in medical work. Anyhow, I have never regretted it, and I hope that you will find a job that you truly enjoy. So here are a few pictures of Wesleyan. In college, I did not explain my decision about Christ. I still was afraid that I would be misunderstood. In medical school at Penn, the environment was conducive to studying and discussing matters of faith, and I was glad to join the student chapter of the Christian Medical Society. The group at Penn met with groups from other medical and nursing schools. One was the Nurses Christian Fellowship at Philadelphia General Hospital, where Beryl was studying. The hospital was right on the south side of Penn, separated by only what they call the Great Wall. I was on a surgical rotation at PGH. One day, I was trying to examine a very obese patient with gallbladder disease. I was unaware that I was being observed by student nurses. The patient was so big that the nurses tied two beds together to hold her. In order to reach the gallbladder area, I found myself in bed, being rather short, examining her. I was totally oblivious to the giggles of the gaggle of nursing students at the end of the ward. What would have attracted someone to this very unorthodox person? Over 1 or 2 years, our paths kept meeting at various events, and we developed a keen interest in each other. Our interests in life were similar. On Sunday nights, we would help staff a mission clinic in downtown Philadelphia called Central Gospel Hall. Faculty members in the Christian Medical Society had assigned us to the clinic. We medical students were so glad, finally, to see some real patients of our own. We would examine them, talk with them, try to encourage them, and send some for further help. An interest in missions developed, but I was concerned about having to be in a position of coercing people to become Christian and to change their culture. As I continued to investigate the issue, I learned that our part in missions is only that of communication backed with prayer. It is public relations, like what I enjoyed doing for Wesleyan. We may communicate the word in word and deed, but it is the task of the Holy Spirit to cause a person to claim the message as his own and to commit to it. We were amazed years later we would see several churches raised up, not by missionaries, but by nationals who had found the scriptures in various ways. Here's a picture of some from one of these churches in Kyrgyzstan. Following medical school, I did a general rotating internship in Salt Lake City. Beryl and I were married in 1961, and I started 4 years of surgical residency in Grand Rapids, Michigan. During medical school, we visited Ecuador, and I had a wonderful experience working at the Hospital of Los Andes del Oriente in Shalmira as a medical student. I was on a public health scholarship to examine stool specimens from the Hebrew and Quechua Indians around Shalmira. And so this is a rather smelly picture in the hospital lab. We visited and collected specimens from the Quechuas. Here's the microscope showing it to some of the Indians at a mission station at Dos Rios. And then we also did it with the Hebrews at a place called Macuma. Anyway, let me just mention, I couldn't resist putting on this picture of Anthony Ridgway, your black box theater guy. He was a great leader. After the surgical residency, we went to Afghanistan with the Peace Corps, and as you can see, this map will explain the main areas we went to. We were in Afghanistan for 2 years, and then we just moved down the road to Peshawar in Pakistan, and then later we returned to Kyrgyzstan, which you can see is to the north, and also North India. So all these are on the map. So Afghanistan was the United Kingdom from 1750 to 1972. During the later years, a friendship had developed between the President Eisenhower and King Zahir Shah, which resulted in the building of a mosque in Washington and a Christian church building in Kabul. Sadly, the church was torn down after 2 years, and the Minister of Culture thought that at that time it was going to be the end of the country. The government had started a new medical school in Jalalabad in the Pashto language, and they needed a surgeon. And so when we made ourselves available, we went there with Interserve and with the Peace Corps. The first night that I got to the Jalalabad, I stayed at the Spingar Hotel, and I got called by the hospital to see a woman in obstructed labor. I knew how to do a cesarean section, but they didn't have the setup or the equipment to do it, so I had to do a procedure that I had never seen or heard of before. I mean, I'd heard of a version and extraction under anesthesia. Fortunately, the mother did just fine, although the baby was dead. So we had almost no nursing staff in Jalalabad, and we had to do with very little. This is our Afghan colleagues here. We had wonderful camaraderie during our time of working at the hospital. And one other day, I was operating, and the abdomen was open, and the patient was starting to wake up. And they had run out of ether. And I said we had to send the family to the bazaar to get things, so we quickly sent them, and they came back just in time so that we was able to finish the surgery. So we just had a wonderful blessing serving there, and were invited to weddings and dinners. The real reward comes from doing the things and not necessarily receiving the thanks, although people were very thankful. There were some Sikhs in Jalalabad, and we were invited to a Sikh wedding. So at 4 o'clock in the morning, about 14 couples are married by walking around the Sikh scriptures that you see in the middle of this room. And of course, we're given gifts like this. So I thought you would enjoy just a couple of pictures of central Afghanistan. This is the Bamiyan Buddha in the center that was destroyed by the Taliban from a monastery from 600 BC. Another beautiful site is Bandiamir, this lake in the middle. And how many of you have heard of or read a book called The Places in Between? Has anybody read that? I know that C.C. Clarke knows it. And I think that Roy was crossing this lake in the snow, and he almost died. There's a chapter in the middle of the book where it talks about that. The school was taken over by Russians in 1969, and we wanted to continue to serve these people, and it so happened that the Afghan Mission Hospital in Peshawar, a ministry of the Church of Pakistan, also needed a surgeon. So we packed our things and went to the border and journeyed up the Khyber Pass. Here's a view looking back toward Afghanistan. We went through what they call tribal territory, where the government of Pakistan has to pay the Afghans 1 rupee per person per year for permission to use the road through that part of the world. And then there were many battles in tribal territory, 3 Afghan wars, a book called Signal Disaster, how the British were defeated the 3rd time. This is looking down into Peshawar Valley and entering Pakistan proper. We arrived at the Mission Hospital, which is in the site of an old Mughal garden. This is the oldest building in Peshawar. The group had chapel in the dome of this building. There were candlesticks and a cross from the Armenian church in the wall of Kabul. In 1824, the king had told them to come down here for refuge. So we had wonderful fellowship with the staff. Beryl and I are, let's see, on the left there, I'm in the blue shirt. And we worked with Harry Holland, who is right behind me, an eye surgeon who ran also the medical side of the hospital. Nursing care was much better. This is our Afghan colleague, Fakir Hussain Shah, and his father from Banu, farther to the west and up in the mountains, and Iqbal. So we had a lot of lovely accomplishments here and enjoyed the fellowship of the staff and the camaraderie. Then I got sick, and we had to go back to the U.S. I recovered, and with our children being engaged in school, we entered the practice of surgery in Harrisburg and then in Maryland. And in 1974, we were able to spell another surgeon for half a year in Shantabawan Hospital in Kathmandu. And in the meantime, our 3rd child, Heather, was born in 1972. And so we worked in Kathmandu. You can see it right in the middle of the map, with India to the south and Tibet to the north. Picture of Mount Everest. And it was a Hindu culture, Hindu and Buddhist culture, quite a different world. And this is the hospital in an old Rana palace in Kathmandu. Welcome to the hospital, the busy time in the clinic, and again, a lot of operations. One interesting thing was that there was an earthquake during one of these operations. Abdomen was open again. I was wondering, the building was shaking. People were running down in the courtyard. What should we do? Fortunately, I was going to put some towel clips on and carry the patient asleep down into the yard, but the earthquake ended and we were able to finish.